chief plea, and he too would go to Italy, and have a rest there from family life. I behaved, I confess, naively as a schoolboy. Not from jealousy, but from a foreboding of something terrible and extraordinary, I tried as far as possible not to leave them alone together, and they made fun of me. For instance, when I went in they would pretend they had just been kissing one another, and so on. But lo and behold, one fine morning, her plump, white-skinned brother, the spiritualist, made his appearance, and expressed his desire to speak to me alone. He was a man without will. In spite of his education and his delicacy, he could never resist reading another person's letter if it lay before him on the table, and now he admitted that he had by chance read a letter of Lubkov's to Ariadne. "From that letter I learned that she is very shortly going abroad. My dear fellow, I am much upset. Explain it to me, for goodness' sake. I can make nothing of it." As he said this he breathed hard, breathing straight in my face and smelling of boiled beef. "Excuse me for revealing the secret of this letter to you, but you are Ariadne's friend. She respects you. Perhaps you know something of it. She wants to go away, but with whom? Mr. Lubkov is proposing to go with her. Excuse me, but this is very strange of Mr. Lubkov. He is a married man, he has children, and yet he is making a declaration of love. He is writing to Ariadne, darling. Excuse me, but it is so strange." I turned cold all over. My hands and feet went numb, and I felt an ache in my chest, as if a three-cornered stone had been driven into it. Kotlovitch sank helplessly into an easy-chair, and his hands fell limply at his sides. "What can I do?" I inquired. "Persuade her? Impress her mind? Just consider, what is Lubkov to her? Is he a match for her? Oh, good God, how awful it is! How awful it is!" he went on, clutching his head. "She has had such splendid offers, Prince Maktuev and others. The prince adores her, and only last Wednesday week his late grandfather Ilarion declared positively that Ariadne would be his wife. Positively! His grandfather Ilarion is dead, but he is a wonderfully intelligent person. We call up his spirit every day." After this conversation I lay awake all night and thought of shooting myself. In the morning I wrote 5 letters and tore them all up. Then I sobbed in the barn. Then I took a sum of money from my father and set off for the Caucasus without saying good-bye. Of course, a woman's a woman and a man's a man, but can all that be as simple in our day as it was before the flood? And can it be that I, a cultivated man endowed with a complex spiritual organization, ought to explain the intense attraction I feel towards a woman simply by the fact that her bodily formation is different from mine? Oh, how awful that would be! I want to believe that in his struggle with nature the genius of man has struggled with physical love too, as with an enemy, and that if he has not conquered it, he has at least succeeded in tangling it in a network of illusions of brotherhood and love. And for me, at any rate, it is no longer a simple instinct of my animal nature, as with a dog or a toad, but is real love, and every embrace is spiritualized by a pure impulse of the heart and respect for the woman. In reality, a disgust for the animal instinct has been trained for ages in hundreds of generations. It is inherited by me in my blood and forms part of my nature. And if I poetize love, is not that as natural and inevitable in our day as my ears not being able to move and my not being covered with fur? I fancy that's how the majority of civilized people look at it, so that the absence of the moral, poetical element in love is treated in these days as a phenomenon, as a sign of atavism. They say that it is a symptom of degeneracy, of many forms of insanity. It is true that in poetizing love, we assume in those we love qualities that are lacking in them, and that is a source of continual mistake and continual misery for us. But to my thinking it is better even so. That is, it is better to suffer than to find complacency on the basis of woman being woman and man being man. In Tiflis I had received a letter from my father. He wrote that Ariadne Grigoryevna had on such a day gone abroad, intending to spend the whole winter away. A month later I returned home. It was by now autumn. Every week Ariadne sent my father extremely interesting letters on scented paper, written in an excellent literary style. It is my opinion that every woman can be a writer. Ariadne described in great detail how it had not been easy for her to make it up with her aunt and induce the latter to give her 1,000 roubles for the journey, and what a long time she had spent in Moscow trying to find an old lady, a distant relation, in order to persuade her to go with her. Such a profusion of detail suggested fiction, and I realized, of course, that she had no chaperone with her. Soon afterwards I too had a letter from her, also scented and literary. She wrote that she had missed me. missed my beautiful, intelligent, loving eyes. She reproached me affectionately for wasting my youth, for stagnating in the country when I might, like her, be living in paradise under the palms, breathing the fragrance of the orange trees. And she signed herself, "Your forsaken Ariadne." 2 days later came another letter in the same style, signed, "Your forgotten Ariadne." My mind was confused. I loved her passionately. I dreamed of her every night, and then this, "Your forsaken, your forgotten." What did it mean? What was it for? And then the dreariness of the country, the long evenings, the disquieting thoughts of Lubkov. The uncertainty tortured me and poisoned my days and nights. It became unendurable. I could not bear it, and went abroad. Ariadne summoned me to Abbazzia. I arrived there on a bright, warm day after rain. The raindrops were still hanging on the trees and glistening on the huge barrack-like dépendance where Ariadne and Lubkov were living. They were not at home. I went into the park, wandered about the avenues, then sat down. An Austrian general with his hands behind him walked past me, with red stripes on his trousers such as generals wear. A baby was wheeled by in a perambulator, and the wheels squeaked on the damp sand. A decrepit old man with jaundice passed, then a crowd of Englishwomen, a Catholic priest, then the Austrian general again. A military band, only just arrived from Fiume, with glittering brass instruments, sauntered by to the bandstand. They began playing. Have you ever been at Abbazzia? It's a filthy little Slav town with only one street, which stinks, and in which one can't walk after rain without galoshes. I had read so much, and always with such intense feeling about this earthly paradise, that when afterwards, holding up my trousers, I cautiously crossed the narrow street, and in my ennui bought some hard pears from a peasant woman, who, recognized me as a Russian, said, "Chitiri" for chetri, 4, "dvadsat" for dvadsat, 20, and when I wondered in perplexity where to go and what to do here, and when I inevitably met Russians as disappointed as I was, I began to feel vexed and ashamed. There is a calm bay there full of steamers and boats with coloured sails. From there I could see Fiume and the distant islands covered with lilac mist, and it would have been picturesque if the view over the bay had not been hemmed in by the hotels and their dépendances, buildings in an absurd, trivial style of architecture, with which the whole of that green shore has been covered by greedy money-grubbers, so that for the most part you see nothing in this little paradise but windows, terraces, and little squares with tables and waiters' black coats. There is a park such as you find now in a watering place abroad, and the dark, motionless, silent foliage of the palms, and the bright yellow sand in the avenue, and the bright green seats, and the glitter of the braying military horns, all this sickened me in 10 minutes. And yet one is obliged, for some reason, to spend 10 days, 10 weeks there. Having been dragged reluctantly from one of these watering places to another, I have been more and more struck by the inconvenient and niggardly life led by the wealthy and well-fed, the dullness and feebleness of their imagination, the lack of boldness in their tastes and desires. And how much happier are those tourists, old and young, who, not having the money to stay in hotels, live where they can, admire the view of the sea from the tops of the mountains, lying on the green grass, walk instead of riding, see the forests and villages at close quarters, observe the customs of the country, listen to its songs, fall in love with its women. While I was sitting in the park, it began to get dark, and in the twilight my Ariadne appeared, elegant and dressed like a princess. After her walked Lubkov, wearing a new loose-fitting suit, bought probably in Vienna. "Why are you cross with me?" he was saying. "What have I done to you?" Seeing me, she uttered a cry of joy, and probably, if we had not been in the park, would have thrown herself on my neck. She pressed my hands warmly and laughed, and I laughed too, and almost cried with emotion. Questions followed, of the village, of my father, whether I had seen her brother, and so on. She insisted on my looking her straight in the face, and asked if I remembered the gudgeon, our little quarrels, the picnics. "How nice it all was, really," she sighed. "But we're not having a slow time here either. We have a great many acquaintances, my dear, my best of friends. Tomorrow I will introduce you to a Russian family here, but please buy yourself another hat." She scrutinized me and frowned. "Abbazzia is not the country," she said. "Here one must be comme il faut." Then we went to the restaurant. Ariadne was laughing and mischievous all the time. She kept calling me dear, good, clever, and seemed as though she could not believe her eyes that I was with her. We sat on till 11 o'clock and parted very well satisfied both with the supper and with each other. Next day Ariadne presented me to the Russian family as the son of a distinguished professor whose estate is next to ours. She talked to this family